How is everybody doing? This is a wonderful day, wonderful morning. Give thanks for life, strength, and health. Psalms 89, verses 49 to 52 says, Lord, where are your former loving kindnesses, which you swear unto David in your truth? Remember, Lord, the reproach of your servants. How I do bear in my bosom the reproach of all the mighty people, wherewith your enemies have reproached, O Lord, wherewith they have reproached the footsteps of your anointed. Blessed be the Lord forever. Amen and amen. This is what David says in the Psalm 89. And I just want to add to that. I want to say that we should not reproach, nor should we be reproached. And it's really sad when we see people oppressed and they have not done anything to attain that oppression. And whether it's you being oppressed or not, someone else, let's never stand by idly and just let people be oppressed, be exploited, be talked down to, scorned and mocked. Let's stand up for the oppressed people like Wonder Woman, like Lyda Zod in Krypton. All right? Hashtag release the Snyder Cut. Leave that in the comments section because we are supporting the release of the Snyder Cut. Don't forget at the end of your comments to put that. Let's get into what we're going to talk about today. In BvS, this eagle-eyed fan, Chris Raven, this was a while back, I think last year, he said, just noticed the bike during Bruce Wayne's montage in BvS. And that bike, which you see right here, is this bike right here. And you can see Bruce Wayne here training for Superman. All right? He says, not sure if it's intentional, but still awesome nonetheless. And he points out the comparison between that bike and the bike in Batman Year 1. You can see here the shocks here, the wheel. It's a little bit different to this wheel, but and you got, you know, the little engine part right there and so on, right? So Fiona Zhang, she took Chris Raven's post and she pointed it out to Zack Snyder. What do you think of this find from Chris Raven? We're all kind of curious. And like I said before, if you look at this bike here, what's interesting is when I look at it in Suicide Squad, I see a similar kind of bike. Here's the shucks in the front, there's the shucks in the back. Of course, the seat is off, but you got this thing here, you got the engine, the little manifold stuff, you got the little muffler system running there, and guess what? You got the same wheel, you got the shocks in the back, the shocks in the front. You know the seat pulls off, and the middle part that's really on here is off as well. And this is an old rusty bike, as you can see. It's been there for a while, but it's more or less a motorcycle, something like this, okay, which Harley Quinn actually drove in Suicide Squad, and this one should help to do the flashback remembrance. Okay, now what Zack Snyder had to say about this, he said, I like to think it was Robin's bike. Bruce can't get rid of it, and that makes sense. Which brings us to Robin. And you do remember this scene in Batman where Bruce Wayne is looking up at the suit of Robin. You see how hard the joke's on you. And we always thought that this was a shout out to Death in the Family, where Jason Todd actually was killed by the Joker. However, this is what Zack Snyder had to say about it. So someone who was very interested in it, he said, Zack Snyder, was there a Jason Todd story in BvS? Like a shout out to Death in the Family. And Zack Snyder says, what makes you think that it's Jason Todd? And this guy, Brian, below, he says, are you saying it isn't Jason Todd? And did they maybe become the Clown Prince of Crime? And to that, Anthony Fabrizio, he comments, after Zack Snyder said that, he says, this is great on so many levels. Would BvS Bruce even bring in another Batman if Dick were killed? So he's assuming it's Dick. I say no way. Also, Dick Grayson dying would really add to Bruce's plunge into darkness. So this guy, he assumes it's Dick Grayson that died. Okay, this is what Zack Snyder responds to the guy and says, it would make Bruce even darker. 20 years in Gotham, and we know what promises are worth. So Zack responds to him and saying, yeah, it would make Bruce even darker, you know. And when he makes the statement, 20 years in Gotham, we know what promises are worth, it kind of gives that depth to it, his narcissism. Now, what do I think about that? What do I think of, let's just assume, Zack Snyder didn't come out and say it's Dick Grayson. He didn't say that. So for those places that are reporting that Zack Snyder said Dick Grayson is Robin, Zack never said that. He's just going with the guy's idea, Anthony Fabrizio. And he's implying, yeah, it probably would make Bruce even darker. He didn't say it was Dick Grayson, okay? He's just going with the guy's statement. Now, if we do remember from Suicide Squad, we know that Harley Quinn was an accomplice, as you can see here, to the murder of Robin. And David Ayer, he basically said that Robin was murdered 10 years before the incidents in Suicide Squad. What's interesting is, remember Batman, he actually worked for 20 years. He was the Batman. And it's interesting that if you go and read up on Dick Grayson and when he was the Robin with Batman for 10 years. So it literally kind of matches up with Dick Grayson's profile. But what do I think about this? Well, honestly, I'm not comfortable with Dick Grayson being the Robin that was killed. I'll tell you 2 reasons why. And this is where me and Zack, if Zack actually was pushing for that, I'm glad it didn't happen. And I'm glad they didn't say that. Here's the following sets of reasons. First of all, Zack is assuming that Bruce would be darker. But even though it would be his first Robin and Dick Grayson would die, here's the things that really messed that up. And I think Zack would actually have messed up everything, that the plans for Warner Brothers and everything. But let's just start with the first point. The first point is Zack is assuming that, let's say Bruce sort of failed to protect Dick Grayson, right? That would have been darker than if Bruce had already mentored a Dick Grayson. They fell out. Dick Grayson went on to become Nightwing and do his own thing, but he was never under Bruce anymore. And Bruce, in order to show that Dick Grayson was replaceable, pulls in Jason Todd. But Jason Todd is one of those guys who's pretty unstable in his mind, and he always wanted to know who his true mother was. Let's just go with the Death in the Family storyline. What happens when Bruce loses Jason Todd? And by the way, if you think about it, of all the Robins Bruce has ever had, whether it's Tim Drake, whether it's Dick Grayson, whether it's Damian Wayne, the one that was most like him was Jason Todd. The one that Bruce Wayne really had to constantly, sort of give hope and kind of couch along was Jason Todd. He was the most unstable of all of them. All right? That's the one closest to him that he lost. Now, here's the thing, and why I think it would be darker. One, he would have failed to have secured Nightwing. Nightwing was beyond him. It was like, nah, we got Riff. I'm not with you no more. I'm doing my own thing. And he starts his own group, the Teen Titans. Because of that, Bruce is trying to prove that he's replaceable. He brings in Jason Todd. Jason Todd ends up dying. I argue with Zack Snyder that Jason Todd's death would affect Bruce much more than if he only had a Dick Grayson running with him and then Dick Grayson suddenly died. Okay? The second thing why I don't agree with this, and it would make sense, at least for the DCEU, is that if the first Robin Bruce Wayne would have, he would be so on that dude. It's like if you have a first child. You're so strict with them. You so want to make sure they walk the right way. Your heart is on the first one. So I just don't see Bruce slipping up and allowing Dick Grayson to die. It just isn't going to happen. Okay? Because Bruce going to be on him. I mean, he's going to push him to the max. Whereas what happened with Jason Todd was not only volatile, but on top of that, Bruce gave him more leeway. He was much more easier on Jason Todd than he was on Dick Grayson. Which is why Dick Grayson left him in the first place, right? So I just don't see, psychologically speaking, I just don't see a Dick Grayson dying. I just don't see it happening, right? Because he's been trained too well. And then the third and most important reason is, and it would just screw up everything, is continuity, okay? There's a Nightwing movie coming out, okay? Warner Bros. is on their charts. Chris McKay, the director of the Lego Batman movie, is going to be directing the Nightwing movie. Okay, so that would just screw up everything. Like, if why would Zack do something stupid like that? Like, shoot. The next thing is the potential for Teen Titans and the potential for a Nightwing movie. I mean, come on. It just doesn't make no sense. So continuity wise, it just screws up everything. And Zack doesn't work like that, in my opinion. Everything he does is kind of like from comic book lore. And if you look at comic book lore again, Zack, in my opinion, has been consistent with the comic books in terms of Death in the Family storyline, which would explain why Batman behaves the way he does. So the fact that Zack would, if he's saying that he's proponent of Dick Grayson, for once I disagree with him. Now he probably could sell the idea to me, but I just doubt it. I doubt he would be able to sell that idea to me, because you just kind of depart from the comics. You kind of depart from also just a slant on the Robin. Now the Robin would have been kind of skewed off, in my opinion, from what the Robin is. In my opinion, Robin gives back to Batman that balance that he needs. And Dick Grayson, while losing to Dick Grayson would kind of throw his balance a little bit off. And he probably, if you lost the first Robin, probably maybe you wouldn't want to roll with anybody else again. It just doesn't make sense that Bruce, after he loses the Robin, he's loaning it, but he's still like really caustic towards his environment in such a way that he wants to annihilate Superman. Now again, it's accumulation of different things, so I could see that happening. You could actually paint an argument, Dick Grayson. But here's the thing that everybody forgets. Do you remember what Commissioner Gordon said to Batman when he saw him working with the other with the Justice League, right? He said it's good to see you working well with others. In the trailer, he says again. Now he didn't say it's good to see you working with another again. He says it's good to see you working with others, which means he worked with others before. You get what I'm saying? He worked with others before. Others, plural. Okay? So if it was just one Robin there on the scene, it was just a Robin, he only worked with Robin, and that was it, then it wouldn't be working with others again. It would be working with another again. You see what I'm saying? And so I just pick up on all of those things. It wouldn't fit into continuity, in my opinion. Okay, I know Zach's arguing the point of, possibly it could be Dick Grayson. Man, maybe it could be Dick Grayson. Who knows? He's just arguing it. But what I'm saying is, I wouldn't argue for Dick Grayson. I would argue for Jason Todd. So those are points where I just, if Zack Snyder's saying, like they published Zack Snyder saying that the Batman that there is not Jason Todd but Dick Grayson. He never said that, by the way, folks. But that's what they're posting up, okay? But if you're arguing for Dick Grayson, I think my argument for Jason Todd would be stronger. Besides that, the WB guy in the WB, he assumed, I would too, that it was Jason Todd. Because it feels like the death in the family storyline. It makes a lot of sense. That's why Batman's behaving the way he does. And all the arguments I just gave you, that's the reason I would argue it's Jason Todd, not Dick Grayson. Okay? That's just my opinion. A lot of people can have their other opinions, but this is where I would come from. And I would argue my point with Zack Snyder. I would give him point by point why I think it's Jason Todd and it's not Dick Grayson. Now, he's the one that did it, so if he thinks it's Dick Grayson, fine. But at the end of the day, I would want to see a Nightwing movie. Why would you kill off Dick Grayson? You know what I'm saying? That's how I would think about it. And everybody wants to see a Nightwing movie. And we got a Nightwing movie on the charts, so if you tell me, we killed off Dick Grayson, I'll be like, man, that's the stupidest thing you could ever do. When Jimmy Olsen was killed off, I was like, okay, they already got reporters there, right? We already got the Daily Planet established. We don't need a Jimmy Olsen. But a Dick Grayson? Come on now. You serious? you understand what I'm saying? That's like a principal. That's not like Jimmy Olsen was like a sidekick. Dick Grayson's not a sidekick. He's like a principal for Teen Titans. He's like a principal dude. You know what I'm saying? Now, you kill off Jason Todd. Jason Todd could come back again as the Red Hood, right? So we cool with that. But Dick Grayson, why would you want to bring back Dick Grayson? Like, that would be stupid. Like, to me, it would just be dumb. Now, of course, you never know. Zach thinks in a different way to how we all think, so maybe he could work out something. But in my opinion, based on just what he said and the statement he made, I wouldn't agree with that. And that's just me, okay? I love this. This is a confirmation for what we already knew. And this has to do with Lex Luthor. So, Letter Paul said, no man in the sky intervened when I was a boy to deliver me from daddy's fist and abomination. Explains it really well. There's an article explaining the parallel of his father to Superman, a very warped sense of father-god figures. It's heavily implied that Lex got rid of his father. And Zack Snyder basically says, we feel the same way about Lex taking out his dad. And I always thought Lex Luthor killed his father as well. So that was the idea I got from it. I didn't get it from no man in the sky intervened when I was a boy to deliver me from daddy's fists and abominations. I basically, how did I figure so? I was saying, okay, this is the thing I thought. I thought his father has so much influence. He's so powerful in everything, right? And Lex is like this bumbling guy. He's not as good as his father. He thinks of his father as the icon. And I'm thinking to myself, how did he end up inheriting everything? His father didn't die of old age, right? So how does he end up with all that stuff? And I'm thinking the only way this can happen is Scythian way. You kill the main Sith and you become the main Sith, you know? But he always idolized and respected his father for the influence his father had on him. He also hated his father, like most Sith Lords and Siths do. And so on. I feel he straight up killed him. That's pretty much what I think. So, yeah, validation there. Now, this one I didn't even know. And I thought this was interesting. I always thought it was Catwoman that was sleeping with Bruce Wayne there. But this is what Zack Snyder had to say about this scene right here. Especially the picture or the photo on the wall. I don't know what that photo is. I can't make it out. But he says here, here's an easy one. It wasn't easy at all. The Mapplethorpe above his bed. I chose to represent the erotic as a drug that Bruce uses sex to momentarily forget his pain. Now that makes sense. I can't make out what the photo is anyway. But at the end of the day, I thought it was really cool that he was able to show us that, you know, Bruce had issues. And obviously he used drugs and stuff to numb his pain. And he had a lot of nightmares. So that makes sense to me. It makes absolute sense to me again. And this other one I just want to point out to you guys. This is from Batman Year 1. All-Star Batman and Robin, the Boy Wonder. And in this is part of the Batcave. And if you look at the Batcave, you see all of these battle gear here. Different battle suits. You got, you know, the samurai here. You got some of the Roman gear. You got some of the European gear. And then you got, what's this? I don't know what kind of gear this is, but he's got a different gear here. And it's really interesting when you look at the Justice League movie. There we have it, man. You see the samurai gear here. You know, mostly samurai, mostly Asian stuff. But here's his bat suit amongst them, so I thought it was cool. And then you got the different helmets, you know, the medieval helmets, you know, the European helmets and stuff. I thought it was really cool seeing that from All-Star Batman. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Don't forget to leave hashtag release the Snyder cut at the end of each video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. You guys have a great one.